Holden's off-road 7-seat SUV has undergone a bit of a midlife update. There's a new face, some much-needed interior upgrades, a whole bunch of new kit, plus a new name. So we say goodbye to Colorado 7 and hello to Trailblazer. Now, while it may look like a new face and some snazzy wheels, the transition to Trailblazer has actually got a lot going on. So what's changed? Well, obviously the front of the car, which is shared with the Colorado truck. There's a new grille, new fascia, new bonnet and new lights, which have LED DRLs across the range. Well, under here, the 2.8 litre Duramax turbo diesel remains. You actually get a clean one when you buy the car, by the way. We've just driven through some puddles earlier today because, you know, we can't resist. Output is unchanged at 147 kilowatts or 200 horsepower, and it still has a class-leading 500 newton meters of torque. Now, you can get Trailblazer in 6 different colours, with metallics attracting a $550 premium. This is absolute red, and it is absolutely red. We're kind of expecting to be mistaken for the fire warden if we stay out here too long. Nothing blowing your socks off yet? Well, that's okay. Things get a bit more interesting inside. Well, they haven't got rid of the annoying chime when you got your door open, and you might have noticed the window opens a crack whenever you open the door to help the car seal nicely when you close it up again. But look, this is an all-new dashboard, and it's much needed, and it was certainly a sore point of the old car. There's new materials around the cabin. We've got to say, it is much, much nicer than what it replaces. The design and materials are really quite chunky and almost American in their implementation, and it really is quite nice to touch in places. In front of the driver, you get a whole new instrument cluster, which has a digital readout, which is really clear and easy to use. But the most important thing is here in the center of the dash, where in the base LT model, you get a 7-inch touchscreen, but this one, the top spec LTZ, there's an 8-inch touchscreen, and both systems have support for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but this one even offers native navigation. Part of the upgrade sees some additional convenience features like automatic headlights, automatic wipers, and of course heated seats. Safety hasn't been overlooked either. You've got a pre-collision warning system, lane departure warning, blind spot detection system, rear cross traffic alert, and a tyre pressure monitoring system with readouts in front of the driver. Pretty impressive upgrade for this segment. Storage isn't quite as good as the old car. The double glove box is gone, and up here where there used to be a closable lid, it's now just a tray. But that said, you do have still one good glove box, door pockets, a center console, but these 2 cup holders, which with the bottle there, you can see it fits in the front one, but it's too tall, a standard bottle, to fit in the back one, so it's not perfect in its implementation. Some elements have been carried over. The shifter isn't new, the steering wheel isn't new, and honestly, is a bit of a disappointment and kind of dowdy part of what is otherwise a really sharp looking cabin for the Trailblazer. Well, if you're familiar with the Colorado 7, then you'll feel right at home in the back of the Trailblazer because very little has changed. The seat material is a much nicer fabric, and it's still quite comfortable with some great room even for tall adults. You've got the roof mounted vents for both rear rows, but that's pretty much it. Getting into the third row is still the same flip and tumble maneuver, and there's enough room back there for bigger children or even adults on shorter trips. But behind the third row, the Trailblazer still has a pretty big drawback. Well, Holden obviously ran out of time when they got to the back of the car because other than the Trailblazer badge, everything's exactly the same. Maybe some taillights please next time. But that means you still get this tiny 235 litre boot, which as you can see with just a small bottle of water in there, already looks full. Now you can fold the seats down really quickly and easily to give you more space, and if you fold everything down, there's over 1,800 litres of cargo volume back there. So it's not totally impractical. But there's some pretty big changes to the Trailblazer under the skin as well. Jump in and I'll explain. So despite the Trailblazer having essentially the same running gear as the Colorado 7, Holden have made some pretty decent improvements, particularly to the gearbox and torque converter for the automatic transmission. So it's called a centrifugal pendulum absorber. Centrifugal, argue amongst yourselves on YouTube. Basically what it does is it settles vibration within the torque converter itself, allowing a more regular and smoother transmission of power. So you get access to all 500 newton meters more regularly. The transmission itself, still a 6-speed automatic. You can tip it across into a manual shift mode, which we've found really handy when you're off-road or when you're towing. but generally if you leave the car in automatic, it's smooth and effortless enough. It's not really a world-beating transmission. You don't sort of get out of the car and think, wow, what have they done? It just suits the engine, it suits the car, and it really is a very effortless car to drive. So another improvement Holden has made is to the steering. It's now an electrically assisted rack, which means it's lighter and easier to steer, particularly around town, and it's a faster rack as well, with less turns lock to lock. It doesn't adjust for speed, it's not a variable ratio thing like that, but it does help you deal with the size of the Trailblazer in urban confines. The final area where the engineers have spent a bit of time improving the Trailblazer is in ride comfort and a little bit of body control. There's a retune of the suspension dampers, so you find that it deals with rough tracks like where we are now quite well. It still has a lot of articulation, very useful for a 4x4 wagon as it is, but it gives a lot more ride comfort, and it certainly deals with urban roads and freeways and highway touring a lot better. Something too that we've noticed is the cabin insulation seems an awful lot better than the outgoing Colorado 7, particularly with noise from your tyres on paved surfaces. We've found it's really quite a quiet tourer. Under throttle loading, you do get a noise from that 4-cylinder turbo diesel under the bonnet, and there's a bit of wind noise, particularly from the mirrors and on the leading edge of the windscreen here. But generally, it's a really good, comfortable family tourer. The vision out of the Trailblazer is actually okay. You've got these big mirrors on the side. There's still that big C-pillar behind the passenger doors, but it doesn't really affect your outbound visibility. The car in the LTZ particularly has now got some blind spot detection system, so you can see if there is anything next to you, but it's never been a really challenging car to see out of, and certainly not a difficult one to drive. The Duramax itself may not be the most technologically advanced engine on the market. It's dating a little bit now, but it does a good job. You feel it's pretty punchy off the line. We know it's strong for towing. We know it's pretty economical for touring as well. And it's a pretty reliable power plant these days, so it's a low risk purchase, especially if you're doing a lot of miles. So even with all the changes to the system, to the steering and the suspension and the gearbox, the Trailblazer remains a really capable vehicle, both on and off-road. You've got that narrow bob tail, which may not look the best, but it certainly helps you for your approach and departure angles if you're going through rougher terrain. And you've got good ramp over height from the decent ride height of the car as well. On fuel consumption, we've seen on our test about 10 litres per 100, which is middling range for a car of this stature. It's certainly not the most expensive part of owning a car anymore, and is something just to keep in mind. I've personally had the older Colorado 7 down around about 7 litres per 100 on a particularly long highway tour, so you'll end up sitting somewhere in that range, which isn't bad at all. The Trailblazer is never going to win awards for being the best looking, the best featured, or the most fancy SUV out there. It's a good, honest, well-rounded offering. And where the areas that we really felt that it was let down in terms of cabin fit and finish and dashboard ergonomics, all of those have been addressed. You've got some really nice areas to touch here. You've got the latest safety technology and even some nice convenience technology now included in the Trailblazer. So it is really a big step up from the Colorado 7, not just in name. Now, an interesting tidbit, why the Trailblazer name, you might be asking? Well, everywhere else in the world that this vehicle is sold, it's called the Trailblazer. Holden wanted to make a real delineation between the Colorado pickup and the Trailblazer SUV, so changing the name from Colorado 7 to Trailblazer made sense. Plus, they don't have to spend all that money on Colorado 7 badging anymore. Well, a new name means a new chance, and while it was never going to be the market leader, a fresh look at Trailblazer brings with it a host of changes and updates that are both welcome and necessary to help the car stay relevant. The best bit is all the extra goodies come at basically the same price, so the value proposition, which was already good, is now even better. Now it's not the refined urban SUV your friends might be buying, but it is a tough, capable family adventure truck that's perfect if you need to tow, get away from it all, or like us, drive around pretending you're the local fire chief.